Stage of your life is a time you have to plan for.
Death is a universal need.
Persons who would take their lives by suicide may, prior to the act, have given us a lot of information.
I am sufficiently intelligent to know that.
Yes, there's corruption in the Parliament of Ghana.
They make me feel bad.
We have been parted from our core principles.
I should be able to count how many millionaires I've been able to create.
There was only one incubator, and by the time we set up and put her child in, the child was dead.
They run away because they don't want to get married at that early age.
Moment tonight, here, we don't just talk, we push the talkers to walk the talk.
Momen. The BBC deserves the TV license.
Mr. President, I thought this was an issue why you came here.
This is my big bro.
On Mondays to Thursdays on GBC News Channel at 8:15 p.m.
Hi, many thanks for choosing us here on GBC News. My name is Momen, and this is Moment Tonight. And tonight we focus our attention on a matter that history books will usually tell you that we've done away with it several hundreds of years ago. But the reality is that it keeps resurfacing in different forms, and I'm talking about slavery. Tonight our attention will be on modern slavery, especially within the agri sector, and that's also because Action Aid has embarked on a project to ensure that we combat modern slavery, whether it's in agriculture or any other sector of our economy. Thankfully, I've been joined by a lady and a gentleman to do the discussion tonight. With me is Bashiratu Kamal. Bashiratu Kamal is a gender and labor specialist with the General Agricultural Workers Union. Bashiratu, many thanks for joining us. She is also prominently known for her active participation in the Fix the Country campaigns and so on. We are not talking about Fix the Country today. We focus on the issues of modern slavery. Also with us is the man who is leading this project. He is John Unko. Mr. Unko is the acting country director of Action Aid Ghana. Mr. Unko, thank you so much for also joining us here on GBC News for this very important discussion. Of course, I'll start the conversation with you because all of this emanates from your desk. But really, let's put the conversation in perspective. Slavery, even before we modernize it, what is it within the context that you have chosen to work on?
Yeah, thank you very much, Momen. We find it, we do not take this opportunity for granted, and so we say good evening to your cherished listeners. But coming back to the point, and also to GBC for giving us the opportunity to engage in this thought-provoking discussion, but more importantly, looking at how we can address issues under the subject matter. When we talk of modern slavery, we are basically making the point that modern slavery is quite manifest in Ghana in different forms. And when we talk of that, the modern slavery is characteristically shown in terms of issues such as child labor, forced labor, all forms of forced labor, debt bondage, human trafficking, and unfair contract, especially within farming practices. And so that simplifies what we mean by modern slavery. It is characterized by all forms of abuses, such as child labor, forced labor, debt bondage, unfair contract relationships, especially within the agricultural value chains.
Right. I'll return to you on the issue of especially child labor and the other issues that you enumerated, but I'll bring in Bashiratu at this point and start from the point of view of what Mr. Unko describes as being part of modern slavery. And I'm particularly interested in his use of child labor. From where I sit, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but I have a feeling that we usually apply foreign experiences to our local context, and usually it doesn't apply. And so when you talk about child labor, so that farmer who goes to the farm every day, his child closes from school, and there's nobody at home, the child joins him on the farm, and so by virtue of being on the farm, the child is given a hoe, do something to help your father and mother, whether it's in blacksmith, whether it's in farming, whichever vocation that the parents are into. If it's watches selling, the child returns from school and automatically train the child the way he should go, and he will not depart from it. You describe this within our context as child labor. I don't get it.
Well, at least you did mention that the child returns from school. So it means that whatever the child is engaged in is not affecting the child's education. So when you talk about child labor, there are several components that you look at, including the ability to go back to school, to the classroom to learn. The child has to be a child. You know, whatever the child is engaged in with you on the farm or wherever is not hazardous, something that can actually affect the child in future. In terms of the psychological development of the child, we need to take care of the children. And I think that sometimes we do miss the point of the differences between child labor and child work. You know, child work is different from child labor. I mean, if you are using children to do things that there is money in return, it has moved from being a child work. When you even go into your homes, there are some work that you can't allow a child to do. So you ask a child to go and fetch water, and you give the child a very big pan or bucket to go and fetch water, knowing very well that probably a 6-year-old will not be able to actually carry that thing on their head.
So which 6-year-old, again, and forgive me my interruptions, are you talking about? Some 6-year-old can carry a bucket of a certain size, another 6-year-old may not be able to carry that same bucket. What measurements?
It's whatever the child doing detrimental to the health and the growth of that child. You see some 6-year-old or some 8-year-old, and then you greet them, their palm is very hard as a result of the type of activity that they are engaged in. And you did make a point about we seem to use Western concepts. I think that, for instance, Ghana has ratified Convention 182, which talks about worst forms of child labor. But when Ghana ratifies convention, we don't straight away ratify everything. We can choose to ratify some and leave some, looking at the laws of the land that we as a country have. And after ratification, we also need to domesticate it so that it falls within the confines of our own laws and our own practices in this country. No. So even if you have a concept that you feel does not fall within the range of your cultural setting, there are ways for you, in fact, the flexibility is there for you to be able to do it. And if a child goes to the farm, I think that there are certain types of work that a child cannot do on the farm. For instance, if there is a spraying activity going on the farm and you ask the child to come to the farm, you are exposing that child to the hazardous chemicals, which might be very dangerous to the health of the child. If the child comes and you ask the child to use the hoe, and the child cannot even hold it, you know, it's heavier than the child, that goes out of child work. You are actually using the child beyond the capabilities of the child, and you are exposing the child to a hazard. Entering the farm, is the child able to wear some bulletin boot to protect themselves? Is the child able to wear overall? Because health and safety is also very important in all what we are discussing. And all these elements, when they come in from different angles and you sit behind to look at what is happening, including leaving the farm, what sort of load are you giving to that child to carry? So you give the child, let me use the local language, you know, and then you say that because the child is my child, you can use the child anyhow you want it. But remember, children are also for the state. So you can't misuse the child and use the child any way you want it, just because you want to say that it's my child and I'm training the child to be this way or that way. child work is different from child labor, and I think we should be able to draw the lines between the two.
Okay, so Bashir too ends on the note that we must learn to draw the dichotomy between child work and child labor. But still on what we mean when we refer to child labor. So, for example, in football, and today we all celebrate Messi and Ronaldo and so on. These are people who started playing professionally when they were teenagers. They were children when they started. Yet we hailed them. Will Smith, in his famous movies, acted with his child, and we all said that's a very good thing he was doing. Today that boy is an actor himself. We don't see that as child labor. Yet when it comes to our local context, then Will Smith, who is not a movie actor in Africa but is a farmer, takes his child to the farm, and we say that's child labor because he's not a footballer. We take the child to the blacksmith shop when he's just 16 years to learn a trade. We say that's child labor.
Yeah.
But when it's football, it is learning of skills to become a rich person in the future.
Good. So I like the way you have brought the message or the discussion home. For us under this project, this is exactly what we are looking for to discuss. Your examples are very classical, very practical. But you see, we operate within a legal framework. And so it's important for us to understand that we do not have an elastic discussion or elastic description of the issues. So, for example, this discussion is situated within Ghana's Children's Act, Act 560, which was enacted in 1998. In the Act, it clearly demonstrates that there is a minimum age for labor, which is 15 years. At the age of 15 years, the child is permitted to do some of the economic exercises that you are talking about.
Light work.
No, I'm coming to that. Then, the Act further goes to talk about light work. Within light work, the Act defines 13 years and below to be the category of children that are allowed or permitted to do the kinds of examples that we are given. However, it should not go against their possibilities of engaging in their educational development. Any time that you take the child, so for example, Messi playing football at that age and throwing away school or playing the football in a way that it does not allow him time to go to school or time to effectively develop his educational situation to the most preferred level, then you are now in the realms of child labor. I hope we are distilling the issues clearly. So we have minimum allowable age for children to work, which is 15 years. At that level, you can teach your child your blacksmith. However, it must not conflict against the child's education. That is one thing to know. On the light work, which is 13 years and below, it is important to understand that, like Bushra said, the light work should not jeopardize one, the health condition of the child, the education of the child. So, for example, you take the child into deep sea fishing. That is hazardous. We have had experiences where a number of children lost their lives in the lake, the Volta Lake, for example, where boats hit storms and capsize, and we lose a number of the children. And so these are the continuum in which we discuss, and we want to situate the discussion within this framework so that we're able to scale it up.
Interesting. So again, when we come to the issue of child abuse, what are the definitions that apply within our local context? That a child comes home, hasn't done the chores that he or she is expected to do, and then the parents wanting to keep him on track gives him a smack. Elsewhere, the child can report to the police, the authorities, and this person will be arrested. In our local context, where a father or a mother does not discipline a child, society rebukes that father or mother. That is our cultural context.
Right.
That is what you want us to change now, that we shouldn't even touch our children again and teach them what to do. Spare the rod is what you're asking for.
Yeah, so maybe Bushra can come in, but I can give it a shot and she can join in the discussion. So as far as this is concerned, you know, one of the critical aspects of our discussion is to ask ourselves the question, whatever action or consideration or activity that a father subjects the child onto, is it in the interest, is it in the best interest? And for example, if you take the ILO conventions, if you take legal frameworks, the question is about the best interest of the child. So you are looking at various forms of corrections of the child, but where it creates a health impact, a negative health impact upon the life of the child, then you are crossing the boundaries. Bushra gave an example that you even give the child a hoe that the child even finds it difficult to handle.
Right.
How does the child use that hoe as an implement? We need to discuss all that within the framework of what all of us have agreed that should guide us. A society with our rules and laws will soon become a banana state. In other words, life will become brutish, nasty, and short. And so we are contributing to the discussion in a way that allows children to undertake light work, in a way that underscores the fact that for child labor, it should be within the minimum allowable ages so that we can allow the children to optimize their economic opportunities whilst benefiting in terms of their educational advancement, whilst it does not affect their health conditions, and we need to look at that. There is some statistic I wanted to draw your attention to, where the ILO argues, and that statistic is based on Ghana's research, that for most children that engage in economic activities, they are about, for girls, 90% less likely to perform or to participate in educational development. And for boys, 85%. In other words, the consequences of pushing children to engage in economic activities. So for example, there are various forms of it, where we have domestic servitude. Some people, as a result of poverty and social consequences, give out their children either by coercion, either by influence, either by threat, either by abuse, either by forms of power, subject them to go and perform domestic chores in areas where they are paid salary fees. That is domestic servitude. You do not want your child to go through that. You would want your child to go through school and become a better person in life. We understand that some people do not become better only through education, but it serves as the minimum benchmark for us to consider. And so if you look at that statistic, there's the need for us to balance whatever parents want their children to engage in. Let's ask ourselves the question, is it in the best interest of the child? Does it affect the child's educational development? Does it affect the child's health? Are some of the considerations we need to look at.
Bashir, your take on abuse?
Well, it's quite interesting, but before that, let me say that according to the ILO, actually, agric is one of the 3 most dangerous occupations in the world. Yes. So why would a parent tell the child that I'm training you and then give the child a cutlass to actually work on a farm? When that cutlass, even adults have to hold it in a certain way so that they are not, they don't expose themselves to any hazards by hurting themselves or cutting themselves or using it in ways that can actually affect them. How do you give that to a child? That you are training the child and the child should use that to work on a farm. I mean, it doesn't really make any sense. Then there is also the issue about punishment of a child and child abuse. Well, the truth is that how, as a parent, do you want to met out the punishment that they gave you, that you were never happy with as a child, to your child? And the question we should also be asking ourselves is whether that even makes the child change in a way. Whether when you do that tomorrow, you always come and meet that the child has watched the bulls. Does it really change anything? You did mention that elsewhere you can't smack a child, but they punish their children. How are they doing it? You know, there are things that some children like. You can keep them away from those things as a form of punishment. There are different ways that you can punish a child. Even telling the child that go and sleep at 6 p.m. is a form of punishment to the child. Yeah. You don't have to punish a child by beating the child. When we were young, they used to this akakadru. And then they will beat us. Ginger. Yes, they will use ginger. And then now, I would say that because it was used on me, and it's actually a good form of punishment, I want to translate that same treatment to my child. It doesn't show love in any way. In fact, it's a form of abuse. Because, I mean, there are a lot of implications in using that. Yeah. So it is no way in punishing a child. But I think that there are several ways by which parents can punish children, and when we want to really know them, there are plenty. You can speak to people who are experts in child development and other things, and they will actually show you several ways and several means. We all have children. We know how we punish them when they do. I mean, just taking a tablet or refusing to let a child play a game is a form of punishment that might hit than using a cane on that child. You know, and it works. Then on the issue about using children on the farm again, I mean, to what end? To what end? Does it mean that those whose parents never took them to the farm, never took them to do any type of hard work, they didn't turn out well, and that they are not trained, and we consider them not to be good adults enough because they didn't pass through that experience? In the same village or in the same community, you would meet a farmer who will not take the child to the farm, and another farmer who would take the child to the farm to say that they are training their children better. But the children will turn out differently. It doesn't mean the one who didn't take the child to the farm, if the child wants to go into agriculture, the child cannot go into agriculture. We learn agric in school too. You know, and it's one of the misconceptions that we need to work at changing. That beyond your parents being a farmer and you thinking that not being a farmer is not lucrative. No, there are several ways that we can change those mindset, and it also includes that I have to go to school to be a farmer with new techniques, you know, in farming. Unlike my father, who was limited, probably because my father didn't have that opportunity, or my mother didn't have that much opportunity to go to school. So for child labor, I think we should all commit to making sure that we deal with it, and shouldn't close our eyes to the fact that it is something that is dangerous. It affects children. We need to allow children to be children. I mean, children are children. They should play. They should have fun. They shouldn't be restricted in their child development stages and journeys. I
recall that there have been times that Western trade partners, and I'm referring to Ghana, have threatened that if the use of children, especially in cocoa growing areas, is not done away with, they will not patronize our cocoa and so on, and that sort of whipped our farmers in line. But beyond children, Bashir, too, who are the other persons that are affected by modern slavery, especially within the agri sector?
Women. Women.
Only women, not other men?
Women.
Tell me.
You said who are the other. You didn't ask me who are the others. So beyond children is women. Because women are more vulnerable, women are more exposed, you know, and also if you, I mean, there is domestic servitude on one hand, there is death bondage on another hand, and there is servitude on another hand. There is forced labor also on another hand. How many men can actually stand on other men that you have to do this whether you like it or not? You know, men will tell you that they have power, but when it gets to a certain level, they will retreat. But they will see that they think that if there are 5 women standing there, they can go there and show that they really and truly have power. And also because of the gender norms, the social norms that we've been brought up with, that some people marry, you know, they used to marry a lot of women so that they can help them on their farms and also have more children so that they can support them on their farms as well. So you realize that, for lack of a better word, women were considered also as tools on the farms, you know, to support their spouses in whatever they did. And when you also look at it, I mean, they will go to the farm to work. They will go home carrying loads. We've seen pictures and videos of women who are heavily pregnant and are carrying all these farm produce to the house. They'll get to the house to do something more, turning whatever they brought home into food for everybody to eat. And after doing that too, being responsible for cleaning the whole place after everyone has eaten again, you know, and then also cleaning, washing and all of the other things as well. Then when issues around trocosi came, when people are in debt, they take men there to the camps. They take women there, you know, that they should go and serve their term for them, that we owe you. So we have brought this member of our family to be with you. So women, because we are more vulnerable and because of the unfavorable social norms that have worked against us over time, in terms of the power relations within our society and the position of men as against where women are placed within our system.
So, Ms. Anko, this project, and I'm sure the background research you did, what did it expose about the level at which we were still operating in respect of modern slavery?
Right. So, thank you very much. It's related to the question of who or which other categories of our socio-demographic structure are affected.
Right.
She mentioned women. That is a critical component. Another dimension of the people affected are the youth. And I know we'll come to that when we are talking about human trafficking. You realize that majority of the youth, as a result of increasing unemployment, and the fact that they have to fulfill their economic responsibilities, are driven by push factors in their communities, and they have to look for greener pastures elsewhere. We've seen instances of many young people passing through the Sahara Desert, facing weather vagaries, getting to the Sahelian regions, and even attempting to pass through boats across the Mediterranean to advanced countries. Some have shipwrecked and lost their lives. All these are forms of modern slavery. But in taking or tackling the issues one at a time, to conclude the matter on the child labor, the ILO defines child labor as work that deprives children of their childhood potentials, dignity, and that which is harmful to their physical and mental development. And so if you look at all this, whether you sprung the child, whether you beat the child, whether you expose the child to chemicals, in terms of agriculture farms, you are engaged in abuse and you are engaged in child labor. Now, in linking that to women, in Ghana, there is the emergence of plantations where we engage in large-scale agricultural production. In those farms, the proprietors require a lot more labor, and one of the cheapest forms of labor is engaging women, and Bushra has talked extensively about that. Now, what that means is that even in that economic setting, there are issues of violence against women. There are issues of servitude against women. And so there are issues of power imbalances. So, for example, in terms of even the economic remuneration that a man and a woman serving in the labor plantations are involved, there are instances where they are discriminatory remuneratory practices. And what that happens, what we ask ourselves, why is it so? It is because of a lot of biases against women. It is because women bargain from a low point. It is because there's no transparent, accountable distribution of power. It is because there's a lot of stereotype against women. If we come to the issue of Kayaye, how many men do we see engage in the phenomenon of Kayaye? The majority of them are young women or adult women leaving their communities in search for greener pastures. All that is traceable to issues of unemployment. All that is traceable to unequal power relations. All that is traceable to the fact that it could even be as a result of abuse. And so we are trying to situate this project to look at how do we enhance the situation of women in a way that they have equal bargaining capacity, in a way that the laws do not create gaps, or the laws do not have gaps, in a way that discriminates against women, in a way that ensures that women equally are not subjected to abuse, and that there is fair contractual engagement in the agricultural value chain.
Right. Okay, so you realize that even as you were talking, I was busy scrolling my phone because a lot of messages are coming in, even though we haven't invited messages to come in yet. And the messages started flowing in when the issue of abuse came in, and especially when Bushra mentioned women, and you also came in with some call with that. So Norbert Mensah says, Momen, very good show as usual, and congratulations to Action Aid for bringing the issue of modern slavery to the fore once again. But the issue is this, that women have suffered substantial abuse. Yes, we agree. But the fact is that the same society has also given men a fair share of the abuse. Okay, and then this one, Patrick Boahen says, the most dominant social pressures men face, women cannot stand those pressures. Tell your guest that there's a demand on men for strength, there's a demand on men for income, and there's a demand on men to be able to control their emotions. And so let's get this out of the way, then we can zoom into the issue of the project and what to focus on. Let me start with you. Yes.
The last question.
Yes.
My answer to that is that is all what we've been saying. Feminists have been saying, let's just crush patriarchy. Once you crush patriarchy, everybody will be free. To an extent that the saying that everything will all be crushed. You know, the social system is what is accounting for this. And that is all what we've been saying. And I don't fancy when we are discussing a problem and somebody wants to come and give you a solution by telling you that, oh yes, this problem is true, but I'm also facing a similar challenge. But there are privileges. You might be at a more privileged end than the other party, and it's also something we need to look at. Women have been disadvantaged for a very long time. That is how come we are discussing this. They are in the majority. We do not say men don't suffer any form of abuse. We've never said that. But all we are saying is that women suffer 7 times what men suffer. The societal pressure that they feel is on them has been compiled and has been compounded into a bigger portion and dumped on women to carry. I mean, you are saying that you are forced to even keep your emotions, but a woman whose mother-in-law comes to the house to actually abuse her, thinking that she's the problem for not getting pregnant, who probably might not be the problem, is also stomaching a certain form of abuse that we don't even talk about yet. You know, so we should just dismantle the whole of patriarchy and everybody will be fine. We will all be fine, you know. And then the first question was talking about the abuse of children.
Yes.
You know, the issue with the children's issue is, I think we need to look at this from a certain perspective. And it's a simple thing about, you were not happy as a child. Some of the ways you were treated. Do you want your child to grow up like that. When we even find ourselves in a society that is a little better, you know, than how it used to be. We used to go and queue and then go and stand by the windows of other people to watch TV. That is not there. So would you say that because you went through that, your child should not watch TV? They should go and queue somewhere to watch TV? You definitely know. You know, so you don't come with a wholesale approach to dump the system that you didn't like on everybody, that because I went through this, you to go through the same thing.
All right. If you just joined the conversation, we are having a conversation on combating modern slavery, and this conversation emanates from the fact that ActionAid has embarked on a project on this very topic, and I'll get to the details of what ActionAid is doing very shortly, but this conversation is also streaming live on our website at www.gbcghanaonline.com and on the Facebook page of the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, as well as on YouTube. So it's you can access the conversation wherever you have to go. Even if you're leaving, you can access on your phone, on other devices as well. So Mr. Uncle, a very brief one on the concerns raised by some of our viewers, and then we'll zoom into why you started this project in the first place.
Right. So thank you very much. My simple response to the questions and concerns is just to continue to point that out that women suffer a lot of structural and economic inequalities. And because of that, there is the need for some form of equity. For example, in terms of women access to land, are our callers suggesting to us that there is a fair distribution of land and ownership of land in a way that the quantum of land a woman can access in a particular village to undertake productive agricultural activities is the same way that men equally have?
In some communities, women are even barred from
exactly. So those are the structural imbalances that we want to bring onto the table for discussion. Thankfully, because of increasing awareness, thankfully, because of increasing understanding of rights, thankfully, because of proper engagement in community entry and discussions with opinion leaders and magaziers and the chiefs, the table seems to be balancing, because now women can have access to engage in economic activities. But there's still a lot of work. In terms of even the world of work, in GBC, there are questions as to whether there is a balance of power between women and men in this working relationship. In the same way, we are looking at how can we create an enabling environment for women to actualize or develop their potentials in every sphere of life that they are in. But for this project, our concentration is in the agri sector, in the areas of food crop production, in a way that we are looking at women peasant farmers. To what extent are they engaged in their farming activities in a more decent and dignified way? And so in that case, we are calling on men and women to sit on the table, to break down or dismantle gender biases, create an enabling environment for both the boy and the girl, the man and the woman, create job employment opportunities in a way that women are not subjected to sexual harassment and abuse before they can get employment. In the same way in the agriculture sector, in a way that farmers do not exploit their nucleus farmers through unfair contractual relationships. So it has to do with balance of power. It has to do with balancing of resources. It has to do with creating a fair environment in the agriculture sector, whether women are engaged in the agricultural productivity, crop production, processing, marketing, storage. There should be very fair, dignified business, decent working relationship in a way that would give everybody a fair share of the national cake.
Good evening, Momen. When it comes to the issue of sexual harassment, the man is often blamed. Little is said about the woman who seduces men at the workplace. Shouldn't that also come up for mention? Question for both of you here.
Unfortunately, the person didn't even define what seduction is. I mean, issues about sexual harassment is an issue of the mindset. You have thought about it and you decided to do. Why don't people go about on the street when they see people who have mental issues and are naked on street, just go and be touching them because they think that they are naked, you know? Issues of sexual harassment, the focus is on women because, again, women are in the majority at the receiving end, you know, of this. And it is clearly an issue of power relations, and it has always been balanced. How many women are in positions of power at the workplaces? How many women are sitting around tables where decisions, even around sexual harassment, are being made? No, it's an issue. How many people are more vulnerable when they are going to look for jobs than the other? You know, it's women because of our biological makeup, and also sometimes as a result of our reproductive, you know, issues as well. So we are more vulnerable, and people tend to think that they can actually just take advantage of women because of that. Issues of sexual harassment are issues that we all need to be interested in, because it is depriving a lot of women, you know, the opportunity of realizing their full potential in the job market, in the agricultural sector, in anywhere they find themselves, you know. And if you say women are seducing you, I do not understand it, because if I'm sure that this person, all this person is trying to drive at is about dressing, that she's dressing to entice me. But you don't go around on the street following everybody you meet around. You think to you the person is not dressed nicely, and who defines what the person is dressed correctly is? I'm sitting here and wearing a veil and everything. It doesn't mean that someone who has actually thought about it, that the person wants to do something to me, would stop, you know, because even some of my my other Muslim women also go through sexual harassment and all forms of sexual abuses at the workplace as well.
All right, now let's come to Action Aid. So you have embarked on this project, combating modern slavery in Ghana. Natural question, why?
Yeah, so thank you very much. From the context of the discussions that we are having, it is emerging that one of the critical problems that is confronting the teeming youth, many women, has to do with unemployment. It has also come out of our discussion that many women, many young people, especially women, are facing structural challenges in terms of the distribution of power, in terms of an even distribution of resources. It has also come clear from the discussion that even in the agriculture value chain, there is unfair business practices, unfair contractual engagements. It has also become clear that although there are legislative instruments, I cited the Children's Act, we also have the Human Trafficking Act 2005, Act 694, as amended in 2009, that seeks to protect victims of human trafficking, that seeks to protect and also ensure that there's punishment for people who engage in those practices, and it also seeks to promote partnerships, you know, in a way that combats or reduces the menace of human trafficking. And so, looking at all these, we, under this project, find out that there is the need for more thorough research on the gaps contained in the legal frameworks that we have preliminarily assessed. We are also working a lot more in terms of desktop reviews, physical visits, observations, and if you like, plantations in big industrial farms, where we realize that they are all forms of forced labor, because people are pushed into offering their services at very cheap, even below the minimum wage as mandated by the laws of this country, and are therefore exploited in the agriculture sector and in the agriculture value chain. And therefore there's the need for Action Aid working with like-minded organizations like the Ghana Agricultural Workers Union and the TUC, with the media, with government, with Africa, the African Continental Free Trade Area, and a cross-section of ministries, departments, and agencies to see how we can undertake a number of interventions, including legislative reviews, including the promotion of decent work through the provision of livelihood, skills, enhancement training for especially young people, especially young ladies, and particularly under this project we are looking at the vulnerable people. When we talk of the vulnerable people, we are looking at people who are economically disadvantaged. We are looking at persons with disability. We are looking at women, smallholder farmers, in a way that we will target and ensure that we are implementing interventions that will increase their livelihood security situations and therefore ensure that they contribute meaningfully to the economic development through the agricultural sector.
Before I bring Rashid back into the picture, beautiful ideas, but have you thought of the hurdles in implementation? So, for example, all these issues you've raised, to change them would mean that we would have to change our cultural, social structure.
Yeah.
That will not be easy to do. Are you aware of the hurdles?
Yeah,
in implementation, yes.
So you remember I remarked earlier on that sometimes it is not because we want jobs to do that we should fail to recognize that there is an emerging change in terms of the social dynamics. Society is not static. And so although we have the structural rigidities, although we operate in a patriarchal system where it's male dominated, we are seeing a lot more increasingly, a lot more space given to women. And we believe that through awareness creation, opening people's understanding and knowledge on the laws and their rights, they are able to rise up to organize themselves and to demand for the fulfillment of those rights. And it is under those circumstances that we say that people are getting empowered. And once people get empowered, it will not, they would resist some of the forms of abuse and the human slavery that we are talking about. So it's more about an empowering process. It's more about increasing awareness. It's more about challenging the status quo. It's more about legal reviews. It's more about providing skills, training people to be able to have their own economic activities. And based on that, they would have the power to resist the modern slavery mechanism.
Is it, Bashira, John made an analogy using smallholder farmers, women, and so on, but he also made reference to minimum wage, for example. And so there are times that we're talking about modern slavery. People are not pushed into it. People are not asked to come into it by force. The minimum wage may be just maybe 10 cedis, for example. The man says, well, I can afford 5 cedis, and so I'm not forcing you. You either take it or leave it. People opt to go and take the 5 cedis instead of the 10 cedis minimum wage because they don't have any option. You can blame the employer for at least offering some space for people to earn something. You go in insisting on this, a lot more people are going to lose their jobs anyway.
So John spoke about unemployment as the basis for all the discussions we are having. There are a lot of avenues that we can use to create employment, and one of it is in the agricultural sector. And if we must do that in the agricultural sector, it must be done under decent conditions. That is why this project comes in. So within the agricultural sector, there are different forms of employment. There are smallholder farmers, there are outgrowers, we have those who work on the plantations, we have self-employed farmers themselves. We have self-employed farmers who have themselves employed other people, you know, to work with them on the farm under different conditions. And what this project seeks to do, that is why it is a partnership center. When you spoke about the hurdles, it's because Action Aid weighed its strength and realize that the best people to do this with us is the union.
Yeah.
Because unions work to promote workers' rights, and beyond that, we fight for social justice in society. And it is in the agricultural sector, and we need the agric union to do this. So when you look at all of it, I mean, an employer who says that they will give you something below what is the set standard is a thief. Because clearly the person has the mind to steal from you. That is why the person decided to give you that. We find ourselves in a situation in this country where people will ask themselves this question of, are bad jobs better than no jobs at all? What do I choose? You know, the fact that I will accept anything does not mean you should do the wrong thing to me. Because remember, you are in a position of power, and you can make things happen the right way if you commit to doing it. That is why this project is also important again, because in Ghana today, we have so many legislations in the agricultural sector. We have so many national policies in the agricultural sector. Government has done so many things over the period of time. Government has ratified different conventions like ILO Convention 184 that talks about occupational safety and health in agriculture. How many people know about it? You know, how many of us, those even who will say that, let me use the word intellectual, knows that there's a convention that talks about safety and health in agriculture. And by that, we want to say that every farmer, everybody who works in the agricultural sector should be protected in ways that they go to work and come back the same way they went to work. So that they do not go to work and come back with one leg or one hand. You know, they need to be protected. Beyond that is also the issue about better wages. No, that the work I am doing, I am being paid as I am supposed to be paid. In a way, there is also the element of profit share. I'm working for you to make money. So the money you make, I also have to get a certain portion of that money as well. Then we are talking about forced labor. ILO has ratified Convention 29. Ghana has ratified Convention 29, which talks about abolition of forced labor. So it means that within the confines of our laws in this country, you know, that practice is not an acceptable one. And the project focuses on decent work, which is SDGs Goal 8 that all of us have been talking about. And under 8.7, it talks about ending modern slavery, child labor, and forced labor, and elimination of servitude and all of that. And that is the major focus of this project, that if people must work under conditions that they do not lose anything, they come out stronger, and they have social protection, their health and safety is guaranteed for them, they are able to even engage their employers, or engage the one who owns the land, or engage the one who is providing them with input, engage the community members, you know, engage policymakers who are making the laws for them to get protected. And the fact that people whose responsibility and institutions whose responsibility it is to protect them are actually doing the work of protecting them.
All right, I'm told that I have just 4 minutes left. So as we wrap up, so Bashira too has given us some of the recommendations, so to speak. But these recommendations will remain recommendations if they are not practicalized. What do you propose be done in order to, you know, lift this from the proposal table to the action ground, very briefly, before we go?
Good. So thank you very much. The discussion is getting a lot more interesting and focusing on our project objectives, which are to facilitate the implementation of measures to identify, prevent, and address modern slavery within the agriculture sector. That's the first objective. The second objective is to eliminate the involvement of child labor, women and women in agricultural plantations and under conditions of servitude. Then third and finally, in terms of objectives, is to enhance the knowledge of individuals and communities in a way that empowers them to resist modern slavery practices and act in concert to prevent such practices. Now, what this means is that we have thought carefully under the project, and we believe that for us to be able to address the big issues as we have suggested, there's the need for a behavioral change. Behavioral change will only come if people are empowered with their knowledge on rights, if people are empowered in terms of economic opportunities, as we sit now, a woman that has her own farm and is economically viable will not take herself to a plantation where she will go and accept a minimum, a payment below the minimum wage. In other words, under this project, we are going to work in analyzing the legal framework of the country, especially as it relates to decent work, to identify gaps and then see how we can work in a multi-sectoral relationship or collaboration, as Bushra said, to address them. Secondly, we are also going to ensure that we undertake and disseminate the research practices in a way that enhances our campaign to generate behavioral change. We are also going to work by working in a way with employment, so that it is a two-way affair, both the demand side and the supply side. And so once the relationship is clarified, then we are on the way to addressing some of the critical issues. Then also organize business leaders and slavery and survivors engagement. We are also going to continue to enhance awareness raising and create avenues upon which people can seek redress. Right. You know, we have the anti-human trafficking center at the Ghana Police Service, and so on and so forth. So we are going to be working with them.
Unfortunately, we run out of time now. But what we'll do is we'll keep a close eye on all your activities, and then we'll certainly get you back here as time goes on to monitor the progress of this project. It really matters to us. But I see that you are being supported by other groups. Who are there? Very briefly, then we go.
The project is actually funded by NORAD, which is the Norwegian Agency for Development Corporation, and they are the ones who are providing the funding for this project, and Action Aid Ghana is the one that is hosting the project, and GAWU is in partnership with Action Aid Ghana to realize the goals of the project.
Thank you so much. Like I said, we will be monitoring this project, and then we'll see the process, because we here at GBC are also committed to seeing to the end of modern slavery. We've been talking about combating modern slavery. With me doing the discussion, Bashira Kamal, gender and labor specialist with the General Agricultural Workers Union. Mr. John Unko is the acting country director of Action Aid Ghana. Thank you so very much, lady and gentlemen, and thank you too for watching on the various platforms. And I apologize to all those who sent in messages, but time did not allow me to read all those messages. We are grateful to you for your time. We'll see you again tomorrow when we return with another edition of Momen Tonight. Have a very good night. Bye-bye.
When the voices that matter speak, they speak to GBC. They speak on Momen Tonight.
By some of your appointments, you appear to be creating a parallel civil service.
2020 is not too far away from today. Are we seeing a comeback?
Would you say that HIPIC truly set any purpose?
The debt overhang on the economy of our country